Hey everybody, Thomas Joseph here. Now today I am super excited to share with you the most asked about question I'm gonna say, and that is, what is the deal with all of the different flours out there in the supermarket? Which ones do I use when? Can I substitute them? All those sorts of questions. Well, today I'm gonna answer them for you. I have a few varieties here in front of me, but before we get into those, I want to talk about wheat flour in general. Wheat, what is it? Well, wheat is, in the United States, probably one of the top 3 grains that are grown, and about 75% of the wheat grown in the United States is hard wheat, considered hard wheat, and 20% to 25% is soft wheat. Now, hard wheat has a higher protein content in it over kind of generally compared to the soft wheat, which has a lower protein content to it. Now, most flours that you find in the market are made of red wheat. There are many different kinds of wheat in the United States. There's red wheat, there's white, but the majority is red, hard wheat based flours. So in front of me here, I have all-purpose flour. All-purpose flour, again, is made from that hard wheat. But the difference here is that in all-purpose flour, what happens is you take the wheat with its 3 components. The first is the endosperm, then there's the bran and the germ. Now, the endosperm is all that's left when you have all-purpose flour. The other 2 items are milled out of the flour, and that gives you something that's great for all sorts of items. That's why all-purpose gets its name. You can use it for biscuits, you could use it for breads, you could use it for pizza doughs, and the overall protein content of all-purpose flour is about 10 to 12%. So it kind of lives in the middle, maybe a little higher up on the protein scale, but it gives strength and structure, but it also has a certain amount of lightness to it for so many different things. And next to all-purpose, we have whole wheat flour. Now, whole wheat flour, it has that same endosperm in it that all-purpose does, but it also has the 2 other components of the wheat kernel. It has the germ and it has the bran. Now, different brands of flours will have different ratios of endosperm to bran and germ, but one thing that you'll notice is you'll notice a difference in color, right? Because it has more of the elements of the wheat in it, and this is made from a red hard wheat, so it has kind of this brownish red color to it. Now, one thing you want to know about whole wheat flour is that it has a higher oil content in it than the all-purpose flour, and that's due to the wheat germ that's in here. Now, whole wheat flours, they add a lot of great fiber to whatever you're making with it, and oftentimes your baked items will be a little denser in texture, and so you sometimes want to mix all-purpose flour and whole wheat flour to get somewhere in between, something that's light and palatable, but also has great fiber to it. Now, a newer product on the market here is white whole wheat flour, and it's kind of in the name, it tells you what it is. It's actually a different type of wheat. So we were kind of talking about the red wheat, the red hard wheat. Well, this is white hard wheat. It's made from white wheat. So it has a lighter color, you can see, and the makeup might be slightly different just because it's a different product, but it still has endosperm, it still has the germ, and it still has the bran in it as well. So it has a lot of that fiber, but it's made from a different strain of wheat that's sold here in the United States. Next to this, I have something that a lot of people tend to buy, and sometimes they buy it and use it, and it's a mistake. It's self-rising flour. Self-rising flour has added leavener to it, so you have to be careful. Read your recipe before you use it. If it does not call for self-rising flour, if it just calls for regular flour, avoid using self-rising, because what's going to happen is you're going to have added leavener in your recipe, and your biscuits or whatever it might be are going to topple over because it's too much leavening for the recipes. Look in your marketplace, read your recipe, make sure that you are choosing the right flour for your recipe. Now, cake flour is a finer ground flour, similar to all-purpose flour, but what it has is a lower protein content in it, and that will yield a more tender, softer crumb to whatever it is that you're making. Now, cake flour has about 5 to 8% protein compared to the 10 to 12 that all-purpose has. Now, of course, you guys, every brand of flour has a different kind of makeup. That's what makes it unique. So these percentages might change slightly from brand to brand. So cake flour here, it has a lower protein content, around 5 to 8%, depending on the brand that you buy. And cake flour is good for not only cakes, but muffins, cupcakes, biscuits, and also scones. And something that I don't have here, but that is within this family, within this range, is pastry flour. It's used a lot in the food service and restaurant industry. Pastry flour has a little bit more gluten in it, so it has a little bit more strength to it, but it's also a finer flour, so it has about 8 to 9% protein, and it's used in a lot of pastries, pie dough and things like that. So you'll get something that's sturdy and will hold its shape when baked like a pie shell, but will also be very tender as well. Now, going in the opposite direction, I have bread flour here. Now, bread flour, everybody these days is getting into making bread at home, and you need a good bread flour for that. Bread flour has a higher amount of protein in it, which that protein gives strength and structure to your bread, that chewiness that you want and that really great crust. Bread flour has about 12 to 14% protein in the mix. So if you're serious about bread making and you want to buy a good flour, make sure you look at the protein content of the brand that you're buying. As we shift down here, we're getting into a little bit more boutique style flours. This is an Italian style flour. It's called 00 flour. And the 00 is in reference to the grind of the flour. So it's a very fine, powdery flour here. It still has a decent amount of protein in it, and it's typically used for pastas or pizza doughs. And what it does is it gives a nice silky texture to things like pasta, but it also maintains a bit of chewiness because it doesn't have a tiny, tiny bit of protein or gluten in it. So you still get that texture that you're looking for. Last but not least, this is called White Lily flour. It's an actual brand of flour. And the one special thing about this flour here is that it uses a different type of wheat. Now, we've been talking a lot about the hard wheat varieties, and the majority of these flours are milled from hard wheat flours, but this White Lily is actually made from a soft wheat, and that means that your final baked good is going to be very light, very tender, and usually it's used for biscuits and pie dough in the South, so things that are a little bit fluffier and lighter in texture. So there you go, guys, a really quick but I think informative guide to flours, why you might need them, why you need different ones. And when it comes to substituting them, to be quite honest, you have to be really careful because there are these variances in the amount of protein that each flour has, and they're ground at different levels, they have a different fineness to them. You really should use the flour that's specified in your recipe. Now, as always, guys, we'd love to hear from you. We love to know what questions you have in the cooking world, in the baking world, so reach out to us, and happy baking, guys.